Hello, hello, and welcome to Friday Happy Hour, everybody. I'm Amanda Farmer. I am with you for our regular Friday Happy Hour here on the Your Strata Property Facebook page. I am going to say a special Happy Easter to you this weekend coming up. Happy Public Holiday Friday. Happy Good Friday, if that's a thing. Welcome to our happy hour. This is our fourth week. We have been doing happy hour 4 weeks in a row now. Kicked off happy hour when the world kind of went a little crazy, and it occurred to me that there may be some apartment owners out there, some strata managers who need some important questions answered on a regular basis at a time when our world, the world we're living in, operating in, working in, is becoming a little bit complicated and is fast changing. Happy hour is also a great time on a Friday afternoon to connect, to check in, to enjoy a little drink, to have a celebration perhaps of the week that was, of the things that we have achieved, to check in and say hi to friends. I can see some of you coming in. We've got a few registered for today's happy hour, which is really exciting. And if you're coming in and you want to drop me a hello in the comments, let me know that you're here so I can see you. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you are here for Friday happy hour. I do have a special guest for you today, as I like to do on our Friday happy hour. Today I have for you Natalie Fitzgerald, strata manager and newly appointed general manager of More Than Strata. I am going to tell you a little bit more about Natalie soon. First of all, just a little note. I have a west-facing window in front of me, and daylight savings is not on my side this afternoon, so I do have a bit of sun behind me. So that's what's going on there. I am seeing Megan. Hello, how are you? Nice to see you again today, Megan from City of Sydney Council. And I am seeing Michelle. Hello, Michelle, who has a cup of tea for happy hour. Fair enough. Fair enough. Is that because you've overindulged throughout the week, Michelle, or just deciding that it is not time yet? Wonderful to be here with you, and feel free to say hi, give us a thumbs up if you are just coming in and seeing me and hearing me. Yesterday was a huge day. You may be aware, maybe you were there, and maybe you had registered, maybe you've seen my emails. We had a webinar yesterday brought to you by the City of Sydney Council, and I happen to be the special guest expert host. It was a webinar on how we can have safe and harmonious apartment living during this time of COVID-19. And I say it was a massive webinar because we had over 650 people registered for the webinar. I think we maxed out at close to 500 of you in attendance, which is just crazy. If you know anything about webinars, an attendance rate, a show up rate of about 50% is usually what we work on. I've been doing webinars for a couple of years now. That is a show up rate of about 75 to 80%. So that was huge. And what that tells me is that this is information that you, apartment owners, strata managers really need, really want. You're looking for some clarity out of the COVID confusion. And I was really thrilled to be able to provide that for so many of you yesterday. If you were there, if you are on the webinar and you're here today, let me know. Let me know what you thought. There is absolutely a replay available of the webinar. So we have a link for that. It is on the Your Strata Property website, yourstrataproperty.com.au/COVID webinar. And my lovely assistant, Michelle, I think is going to pop that link in the comments there for you. So you have it there available. If you missed it or you want to go back over and have another watch, It was full on. We covered so much, and as I do, talk very fast and try and fit everything in for you. So if you did watch it but you want to catch it again, head over there. The slides are there for you as well. We did promise that we'd give you the slides. A big thanks to Megan Chatterton at City of Sydney Council for organising that. She did all of that, got us all together, and there was just some really good questions coming through, really important information delivered. We talked about meetings. We talked about the public health orders. What do they actually say? Let's stop guessing. We talked about safety and cleanliness of common areas. What about disclosure of confirmed cases in our apartment buildings? Levies and finances. We talked about short-term letting, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more today. We talked about work on common property, overcrowding, fire safety, waste management. What happens if there's a next level lockdown? Keeping the peace, staying socially connected. And I gave you lots of links and places to go for additional resources. And answered your questions too. Didn't get through all of them, so I do have on the list today some of those questions brought over from the webinar. I know some of you who were there are here today, so feel free to say hi. I'm just heading back over to the comments. I can see Bruce, lovely to see you, and I can see Bruce saying thanks to Megan for organising yesterday. Bruce, you've just joined us. I did mention we had close to 500 actually in attendance at the webinar. That was amazing. Hi Tim, lovely to see you, and there is the link there for the webinar in the comments. Thank you, Michelle. And yep, excellent. So 480, and we did run for about 70 minutes. We went a little bit over. Perfecto. All right, so head over and check out the replay of the webinar and grab yourself the slides from that link that we have just put in the comments. I heard from a number of you both in the chat box and also after the webinar sending me emails. Some of the comments, Melinda said it was very informative and extremely well run. So that is a testament to Megan's organising. Lee said it was the best webinar she's ever attended, which I loved. Thank you so much, Lee. It was really good to hear that. Sean, who I know is both a strata manager, a committee member, and a resident, said that it was a fabulous webcast and we provided really useful resources for helping managers to respond to the concerns of owners in buildings, as well as if you're a member of the committee, he said that we covered everything that committee members are all thinking about. So that was really good to hear. Awesome. So yourstrataproperty.com.au/COVID webinar, if you want to check that out. If I can give you a key takeaway, what I said a number of times on the webinar yesterday is that this is a difficult time with hard decisions that need to be made. And I think you'll probably hear me and Natalie talk about that today as well. There are grey areas. There are no hard and fast rules. We don't have the guidance from government specific to apartment buildings that we might like to have. So that means our committees are going to have to make some very careful, very considered decisions. And you need to be thinking about the unique circumstances of your building, which may be very different to another building. So there are shades of grey, and what I wanted to leave attendees with is this message. Always think about what is the least worst decision that I can be making, that we can be making as a committee in this really difficult time. Okay, so that is what you will hear on the webinar a number of times. Nice to see you, Ronnie. Good webinar yesterday. Thank you, and happy Easter to everybody. If you're coming in, feel free to say hi. What else? Okay. Our strata managers, I believe, are doing a fabulous job right now in a really difficult situation. I am also seeing now, the more owners that I communicate with, the more webinars we do, the more happy hours we do, how many committee members and owners are just so committed to educating themselves, to learning, to asking these questions, the answers to which will really help your buildings, your residents be safe, be as happy as possible, the least uncomfortable in this time. So I do want to congratulate you all for that. I actually said it on the podcast this week. I have always thought our strata managers are absolute heroes, but I can just see you all going above and beyond at the moment. I know you're all doing long hours. You are being those advocates, those fearless leaders, even if it is an unexpected role for you, and doing your best to keep up to date with this rapidly changing, fast flowing information. So I want to do as much as I can to help you keep up to date. I did hear from a number of people yesterday yesterday that the webinar was a really great resource that brought everything together, answered a lot of those questions that everybody's asking in the one place, and gave you some really good guidance and additional resources that you can then branch out to if you want to. The other thing that I've done in addition to the webinar, recognizing that there is just so much to be aware of, is I've set up a web page. And this is a dedicated page that can be your information hub when it comes to COVID and strata living. It is covidandapartments.info. You'll see that is the place where I'm putting the guides, the articles, the web links, podcast episodes, videos that I think best answer your recurring COVID questions, because you're all asking the same questions, they're all coming through, and have your one-stop shop, the one place that brings together the useful stuff that I've read, I found it is accurate, that it is going to be of assistance to you, then that is a good place to find it, covidandapartments.info, and we'll pop the link in the comments there for you. You can post questions on that particular page. So if you're looking through that stuff, if it's not a happy hour day or another day when we're going to have a webinar or have a chat about this, feel free to pop questions on that page. I'll either answer them there or I will put them on the list for an upcoming podcast episode or a Friday happy hour. New resources are added there every day. And if you want, you can opt in to get some inbox updates as well. So when we have additions to the page, then you'll be the first to know about those in your inbox. Okay, awesome. Just checking to see there are so many more of you coming in. So feel free to say hello. Let us know that you are here. We are soon going to head over to welcome our special guest for today. And we are going to talk about short-term letting, something new that has happened today in New South Wales. And we're going to get into many more of those COVID questions. But before I welcome our special guest, I do want to say this. Over the last 4 weeks, really, I have seen a dramatic increase in the number of inquiries to my office, my legal practice. Those of you who might be stumbling across this, I am a strata lawyer, from people like you, from managers, from owners who need answers to these difficult questions. And you know that I am trying to answer those as best I can on these regular webinars and these live events. Those of you who've worked with me or who've known me for a little while will know that I structure my legal practice so that if you approach my office wanting to work with me and you want to do one-on-one to get my legal advice and my representation, then you work with me. I don't have a bunch of junior lawyers that I farm work out to. If you want me, then you get me. This, however, means that my calendar is usually pretty full. It is at the moment. Anyone who has approached me recently will know that. I'm not always available immediately. And it also means that I'm not the cheapest strata lawyer in town. In fact, I'm probably on the more expensive end. And because I've noticed this increased need, I do want to make sure today that you do know that I do have an online membership community, the Your Strata Property Membership. Many of you watching will be members. I know, and thank you for being here and for supporting us as you always do. I built the membership community about 4 years ago as a place for owners and for managers to have a direct line of communication with me. We do that through an online forum. I am there every day answering members' questions. And it's also a place where I make my legal resources, my templates available to members. And that includes bylaw templates. We also have our past webinars, our members only videos. It is a place for members, whether you're owners or whether you're managers, to have that access to resources that I'm otherwise sharing one-on-one with my legal clients. The membership doors are actually not open right now. They are rarely open. I only open a couple of times a year, and that is usually only to people who are on the wait list. Now, since yesterday's webinar, I have seen increased inquiries about the membership. You're heading over to the website, you're seeing details about the membership, and you're hitting the wait list, and you're contacting me and saying, Amanda, there's a wait list. When are you opening? Because I really need to be part of this membership now. I had not planned to open the doors to the membership anytime soon. I'm watching that wait list. If it keeps growing, it is something that I will absolutely consider. If you're not a member and it's something that you're interested in, do let me know. I am thinking about it. And if you tell me that it will be of help to you to be part of the membership at this particular point in time, then absolutely I can think about opening the doors for you. So if you are interested at all, just thinking about membership, want to know more, head over to yourstrataproperty.com.au/membership. You will be directed to the waitlist. Join that waitlist, but that is the best place to be communicating with me and hearing more about what membership has to offer. If it's something that I can open up to help you all more at this time, then I'm absolutely willing to do that. You let me know. Alrighty, now with that, I am just going to head over and say hello to a few new attendees. Lovely to see Gary, lovely to see Carol and Henry. Again, I apologize for the setting western sun that's happening over here and my backlighting I have, but we're all here and we are ready to welcome in our very special guest. Our guest today is Natalie Fitzgerald. Now, Natalie has a career spanning almost 20 years in the strata sector. You won't believe that when you see her. And she is an advocate for innovation and leadership in strata. Natalie is the newly appointed general manager of More Than Strata and is the co-host of a brand new podcast, More Than Business Weekly. She is working from a platform of choosing yes. I love that. You'll find Natalie presenting for City of Sydney's Strata 101 workshops, for Deakin University, UNSW, SCA, and Women in Strata, where she's a member of our steering committee. And Natalie is also the author of an as yet unpublished collection of short horror stories. Title pending. We might be able to help you come up with a few titles here, Nat. I am going to press my magic buttons here and welcome in Natalie Fitzgerald. Hey, Natalie. You're here.
What? I was just watching the countdown. Hello.
I've just lost your sound for some reason.
Hello.
Oh, no.
Am I back? Can you hear me?
Just one sec. We will mute and unmute. Have I got you?
Have you got me?
Oh, I don't have your sound. I don't know why. Let's try again.
Now?
I haven't got you. Alrighty. I'm not sure why that's happening, Natalie. We had tested that and that wasn't working.
We did.
1 second. Alrighty. I'm just looking over. Bruce is saying, Amanda, you should go on Courageous Conversations podcast just like Natalie. I assume there, Bruce, you are talking about Leanne Pilkington's podcast. She is going to be a guest of ours very, very soon. I don't know whether is it me who can't hear Natalie or if anybody else can hear Natalie.
Yeah, let me know.
Do let us know. Oh, you can hear her. Oh, well, that's not okay. I know what I've done. Bear with me. All of my poking around here means that I am. Now I can hear you.
Oh, yay.
No, I can't.
No.
All righty. I wonder why that was happening. No. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Let's try another. Am I getting some sound from Natalie?
Can you hear me now?
Sorry that this is happening at my end. Yeah, guys, we might need our guest to interpret for us. For some reason.
Can you hear me now?
I can't hear Natalie. I'm trying again. Hello, hello.
We did try before. How weird.
Yeah, go.
Well, I can say hello to everyone. Michelle and Xavier and Carol and Pauline and hi Megan and Bruce and Ronnie and Gary. While we deal with technical difficulties, because that is get work from home. Hi Jen. Are you speaking? I am speaking, Amanda. I can't message Amanda. Oh, I can hear you, Amanda, sound I couldn't hear before. Maybe we've all got too much technology going on.
I can hear you, Nat.
You can hear me? Can everyone else still hear me?
Can everyone hear me? It's a little bit awkward in my ears, but I can deal with that. People can't hear me? You've lost me? No.
Maybe try. I think we're good, maybe. Can you guys hear both of us? Yes.
Okay. And
you got to get up.
As long as you can hear both of us, just let us know because we're relying on you. Alrighty, perfect. Okay. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Sorry for the interlude. Nat, you'll have to fill me in on what you've already shared with our guests.
I'm just saying hello.
Perfect. Because
I miss people.
Good. Thank you. I was going to ask you to tell us about your new podcast if you haven't already.
Well, no, I haven't, but thank you, because I will happily talk about the podcast. So More Than Business Weekly, available on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and iHeartRadio, is what it sounds like. It is a podcast all about new business. We recorded some episodes and had to dump them because they very quickly became irrelevant in our new COVID world. We recorded them in kind of early Feb. And it is an inside view of life inside a new business, because there are heaps of podcasts by amazing business experts, but none on what it is to be in the moment. And in the moment is scary and terrifying, but amazing and exciting. And you're constantly torn between a million different emotions. So we wanted to make a podcast all about that. It's not just me and Aggie, who's my business partner. It is Aggie and I and other special guests who are hoping Amanda will be one. Talking about life inside new business and small business, and new and small business right now, which is nothing any of us could have planned for. So please do look us up. It is a picture of myself and my business partner, Aggie, and there's kind of green in the background. If you find us on any of those platforms, we'd love to hear from you.
Feel free, Nat. I know I just put you on the spot about that, but feel free if you want to just type into the box there, which you should be able to see on your side, if there is a link that people can go to check out the podcast. It sounds like the perfect time to be talking about these issues for sure. And I would love to be a guest on your podcast. Yeah. I'm just heading back. I'm seeing all of the comments here. Thank you very much, everyone, for telling us you can hear.
Yes, thanks,
and Gary's saying have another wine. Gary, I did have lunch, as I put in the email that I sent out to everybody. I did have lunch with my family, virtual lunch. There was only one glass of wine over lunch, and I've saved this glass of wine for happy hour. So I can't blame it on the wine. I can blame it on trying to get this mic working earlier. And I think what I did is cancel out the headphones in the meantime. So thank you for dealing with all of that. Lovely to see you, Savia. Lovely to see you, Pauline. Chris, good to see you. Heather is here too. Excellent. This is a bustling, busy Friday. And Jan as well, I'm seeing you. Let's talk about, Natalie, today is the 10th of April.
Yes.
Some new legislation has started.
On a public holiday?
Here in New South Wales. Yes. And it was... it is legislation that went through in 2018 but had a deferred commencement date, and it was only about 4 weeks ago, when all of the current world craziness was breaking, that we received a tiny little note, and only if you were looking for it would you know, that a new section of our Strata Schemes Management Act was due to start today, the 10th of April. And do let me know if anyone's heard any different, but on my research that date has not changed. It is still today. And so we will be seeing our legislation, I assume, on all the websites from Monday, including now this new section 137A in our Strata Schemes Management Act of 2015. What does it say? Some of you may have been on my previous webinars where I have talked about this. The way that I say it in my words, rather than reading you some boring legislation, is that a strata building can now pass a bylaw that prevents investor owners from short-term letting their lots. Short-term letting now has a definition that cross-refers to the Fair Trading Act that says it is for residential accommodation for 3 months or less is short-term letting. And our investor owners, they are people who are not using their property as their principal place of residence. So there has been a bit of confusion, if you like, or uncertainty, particularly in New South Wales, because we haven't had a higher level court decision on whether or not it is legal to pass bylaws banning short-term letting. It is now, yes, illegal to have a bylaw that prevents investor owners from from short-term letting. It is not legal to have a bylaw that prevents owners who are using their principal place of residence for short-term letting. We can't stop them doing that. What are your thoughts on this, Natalie? Have you had a read of this?
Yeah, look, I don't entirely disagree with the compromise, I guess, that the section has tried to come up with. If you have a second bedroom, if you're there to supervise your Airbnb tenants, in theory, they should behave better. Therefore, not a big deal if you're short-term letting, as opposed to doing it as a hotel let situation. Maybe not ideal. I think owners, through bylaws, which as we know require 75%, should have the right to make that decision on their own. But this is the law we've got. Don't think it's terrible. Of course, what we don't have is the code of conduct.
Yes.
Which we were all, was to commence on the same day, which would have made more sense because we would have had two sets of legislation acting in harmony together. And the great thing about the amendments through fair trading is that fair trading was supposed to take on the managing the things that went wrong. And that hasn't happened, which puts it back on the owners corporation. As we know, enforcing bylaws is not an easy process.
Yeah, so what's happened with the legislation that starts today is that it says the regulations can provide for a code of conduct, and the code of conduct will be in the form that is published on the department's website. That legislation is in effect because it's all part of the legislation that brings in Section 137A, but the code of conduct has not been prepared and will not finalised and has not been published on the department's website. So that is why it doesn't exist. It is in draft, so we have some idea of what it's supposed to say, and as you say, Natalie, there's supposed to be oversight by the Fair Trading Commissioner. There is supposed to be an exclusion register for those who breach the code of conduct. Then they are on the exclusion register, a 2 strikes policy. There are fines, all the usual things that you'd expect to find in a code of conduct. So it was going to be another tool in our owners corporations toolkits to be able to manage this issue. No, it hasn't started yet. That doesn't mean that you can't convene a meeting to adopt a bylaw that complies with Section 137A. I said in the webinar yesterday that if you desperately need to adopt this bylaw now because you're really struggling to deal with this issue in your buildings and you're particularly concerned because you want to stop the spread, if you like, and you're concerned about hearing about short stay properties being used for quarantine or isolation accommodation, I know a lot of you are, then yes, you can meet and propose this bylaw. Keep it simple. You may want to be amending it down the track once we do have a code of conduct and once we do have the state environmental planning policy, which is the other part of this framework, still hasn't started. That's the part that is apparently going to limit the number of nights per year that an owner who is using the property as their principal place of residence, limit them to 180 nights a year was the proposal. So there is down the track proposed to be a limit on resident owners, principal place of residence. At the moment, that doesn't exist. And there was also to be a new fire safety standard. And I have spoken to members on a member webinar recently about how onerous I think that fire safety standard is, and really says that we need to be fitting out our lots if they're used for short-term accommodation with commercial level fire safety systems. So smoke alarms in every room, hardwired to the mains, strip lighting in the hallways, fire extinguisher in the kitchen, fire blanket in the kitchen, things that I am sure so many residential lots just do not comply with those requirements. And when that fire safety standard comes in, then that's going to be something else that buildings can incorporate into their bylaws to have cross-referencing to that standard and bringing to the attention of owners that they must be complying with that as well. Gary saying we have people renting multiple properties, then Airbnb them here and elsewhere. Yes, Gary. So 137A, banning investor owners, is not going to deal with those tenants who are illegally or otherwise subletting their properties, because they are actually on the lease as the person who has the apartment as their principal place of residence. So the new section of our legislation does not operate to prevent that. And I know that has been a really big concern for owners, but definitely the fire safety standard would be relevant to that kind of short-term letting, and the state environmental planning policy that caps the number of days that people like that can short-term let their properties. That's going to be relevant.
Yeah, it's a tragedy is way too dramatic, but it's certainly not ideal that we're in a situation where the Strata Schemes Amendment has started and we don't have all the other pieces that were supposed to fall together to make this really work together. One I was really looking forward to personally was the fire restrictions. That was going to make it really difficult for people to Airbnb unless they were really committed to it. I'm not against Airbnb. In some places and some buildings it works, and in others it doesn't, which is why the right for owners to make that decision via bylaw is so important. And that's a decision you can make now. I would just say to owners, be prepared to amend the bylaw when that code of conduct comes in, if you do make the amendment now, so that they all marry up and make sense.
Yep. And definitely the fire safety standard, I think that the importance of that is that if we are having people who are in and out on a few days notice, they're not familiar with the building, the way that it works, and there should be these higher standards as if it was a hotel, as if it was a commercial premises, because it's being used for that purpose. Jan is just saying, if smoke alarms are hardwired, then will this not be another responsibility for the Owners Corporation? Very interesting, Jan. There are a number of items, and hardwiring smoke alarms is one in older buildings where I understand they're not hardwired. And the newer buildings, I think they already are, but adding in new smoke alarms and having to hardwire them, that would be, if you put in your bylaw when this law takes effect, that should be a responsibility of the owner who wants to short-term let, that they would need to seek the approval of the Owners Corporation to alter the common property to be able to carry out those works in order to be compliant with the fire safety standard. And as I said, it's not just hardwiring smoke alarms, it's actually installing lighting in hallways within the lot that follow the path of the exit. And these are really significant works that are very, very likely to be affecting the common property. So you'd want to be requiring your owners who are short-term letting their properties to take responsibility for seeking approval to do those works and taking on the responsibility for their future repair and maintenance. So absolutely, that's why I'm saying down the track, I think I'd be recommending rather detailed bylaws that cover off Section 137A, that cover off the SEP, that cover off the fire safety standard, that cover off the code of conduct. But for now, if you're desperate, yes, you can meet, go ahead and pass that bylaw. I talked in the webinar about how you might be able to be creative about your meetings at the moment and have meetings where you only have one person present. Head up and check out the replay of the webinar. You'll see details there. And there's a link to that further up in the chat here to the webinar replay. I did have a question that came through. I'm not sure if this was on the webinar or just earlier today. If we already have an existing bylaw about short-term letting, do we need to revisit that? My short answer to that is yes. You will probably find, I know the template that I provide to members is a template, you'll probably find you've got a bylaw that covers everybody in a blanket way. Well, you can't do that anymore because Section 137A differentiates between people who use their lot as their principal place of residence and people who don't. So you need to make sure you're revisiting your bylaws and you're not falling foul of Section 137A.
I'd agree. Obviously, now's definitely the time to, I guess, do a interim new bylaw, if you want to call it that, if you are in a position where you want to take action right now, knowing that it is going to be beneficial for you to update that bylaw later when the rest of these pieces of legislation start to happen. I would recommend, it is probably worth, as much as we love that Amanda and OCN and others do these template bylaws, it's probably going to be one of those bylaws worth spending money on getting something bespoke written for your building, because everybody's going to have different circumstances in relation to your fire safety in particular, depending on what you have in place now. You may not have hardwired smoke alarms at all, and that's now something you have to contend with. So it's going to be one of those situations where it's definitely worth investing in getting somebody to write a bespoke bylaw that's going to really cover your building.
Yep, definitely. And I'm already getting those inquiries for those bylaws, and that is good advice. Well, you do find templates out there, and they might be good for the interim, short term, or maybe as a starting place to start the discussion with your committee and see where you might be able to add to that, adapt that to meet the unique circumstances of your building. But at the end of the day, keep yourselves up to date on this one when it comes to short-term letting. I know there's a lot to be bearing in mind and keeping up to date with at the moment. That is just one more thing. But I am here to help you keep up to date on that that one as well. It's certainly on my radar. Now, Natalie, if you would like to help me out here, we did not have enough time yesterday in the webinar to get through all of the COVID questions that we had. There were lots and lots of them. And I've made a little list, which I've shared with you, of some leftover questions. And I know we probably have some people here today who are interested in those and who asked some of those. So I want to just spend some time going through them if we can. First of all, this was a really good question that jumped out to me. What is the situation where residents might be taking photographs of other residents and visitors to report them for breaches of the public health orders? So where they are gathering, or probably more appropriately, where they're not staying at home, having parties, visitors, then is it appropriate to be taking photos? And if people are doing that, are they allowed to be doing that? What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one, right? My first thought as a human being is mind your own business. But right now, it's everyone's business if there's a potential risk of us getting COVID-19. So I understand people's concerns in watching that. What we do need to be aware of is there are reasons why you might have guests in your home. Yeah. And we can't assume to know where our neighbours might have people in their houses. So you got to be really careful. My understanding of privacy laws, and Amanda, you might be able to clarify this, is you can, if you're in a public place, you can take a picture of anything. If you're in a public place doing that, there's nothing wrong with that. What I don't think the police need right now is kind of, I hesitate to use the word nuisance, but in a way it's nuisance complaints. If someone's having a house party with 10, 20 guests and there's music blaring and they're obviously defying social distancing, sure. But if, somebody has a guest or two guests and you're not sure what the situation is, it could very well be their caregivers who are visiting, they are children who are visiting. There are a number of people who are permitted under reasonable human reasons to be there. So it's about, unless it's something that is obviously an issue, in which case you would call the police, I'd probably leave well alone.
Yes, I think that is sensible advice. What I did do on the webinar yesterday is show everybody the public health orders. There are a couple of relevant ones at the moment. This is the restriction on gathering and movement, and there is also the quarantine order, which is about travellers going immediately into quarantine. Not very long, just a few pages, and very digestible. And my recommendation, as I said on the webinar, is please read it and don't assume. And they're not hard to read, and you will gain a better understanding of what they mean. And you will also see in this Schedule 1 the list of reasonable excuses, which means a reasonable excuse not to be staying at home, which includes things like exercising, we've heard that, traveling to work if you can't otherwise work at home. And as Natalie's saying there, caring for somebody, caring for a vulnerable person in emergency situations for compassionate reasons, these are all reasonable excuses. So I think we need to be careful in our strata buildings. If we're seeing people turn up as visitors, if we're seeing what we think to be gatherings that shouldn't be happening, that we are not jumping to conclusions and we are not stepping in where there might be a reasonable excuse. And quite frankly, you do not have a right to know what that reasonable excuse is. You are not the person enforcing the public health order. Please remember that. Strata buildings, strata committees, it is not your function to enforce public health orders.
That's a really important message. Don't call your strata manager. They can't do anything.
Yeah.
We'd love to help you, but we have no authority to be doing anything. It's a police issue. It's not for us. And unless, as we said, it's a really obvious breach, then it's probably just not our place to do. I get it. I'm sitting here listening to cars go past the street going, but ultimately, as bored as I may be, not my business.
Yeah, indeed. I do want to address that question from the perspective of taking photos. Check our podcast episode number 199, where I spoke specifically about the use of security cameras on our within our apartment buildings. And you might be surprised to find out that it is actually legal to install a camera or to be taking photos that then records or takes a photo of somebody else who may be in their private property. So there is a loophole, if you like, in the Surveillance Devices Act in New South Wales that people have been complaining about for some time, that there is nothing stopping people from recording others when they are in their own homes. Where you have a problem within strata schemes is where security cameras or other devices are installed on the common property without approval, because that is an alteration or addition to the common property, and you would need a special resolution at a meeting to be able to do that. So while I don't want to encourage anybody to go taking photos of others to prove breaches of public health orders, I think it is important to be aware that if somebody else is on their balcony taking a photo of you on your balcony, that's actually not illegal. Surprisingly so for some people.
Yeah, that's what I found out myself when I was taking pictures of a bylaw breach and got screamed at by a lot owner who called the police, who swiftly told them I was doing nothing wrong.
Excellent.
But is really yes, you may be able to take photos of your neighbours, but you don't know where those people are there. So just be, I guess, empathy is the key to all of us getting through this right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we need to have perhaps a higher level than usual of tolerance and empathy and understanding and awareness, and acknowledging that this is a moment in time, that this too shall pass, that we're all locked up together and we're not able to go out to the gym or out to the pub or out to the club. And it might be that my next door neighbours might be having a party tonight and have the music up loud. They don't usually do that, but I understand that it's a long weekend and they're not able to otherwise get out. So I'm not going to make a big deal about that.
Likewise with kids. I'm hearing complaints about kids. Guys, kids do not understand. They are locked up, cooped up, and they don't know why. They are going to run on hardwood floors. They are going to get frustrated. It's not fun when you're working from home, but guess what? I feel at this point in time, we just got to go with it.
Yep. Another question that came up yesterday: could a tenant have a case against the Strata Committee for loss of amenity because the Strata Committee has closed the indoor pool? Really, really big question that keeps coming up about the closure of gyms and pools. Again, I answered this on the webinar yesterday. The public health orders in New South Wales, and it's different in other states, but in New South Wales, the public health orders don't operate to force the closure of our gyms and pools. They only relate to public gyms and pools, and gyms and pools in our New South Wales strata schemes are private areas. So it is, as I said at the top of this video, it is, I believe, for the Strata Committee to be making its own decision based on the unique circumstances of the building, making an assessment, a risk assessment, if you like, because of the nature of our facility. Is it indoor? Is it outdoor? Is it large? Is it small? Can we afford the extra cleaning? Are there people down there monitoring? Is there a bathroom there? Is there a change room? All of those are going to be relevant factors to take into account when you're deciding whether to close the gym or pool. And I believe if you've done that as a committee, transparently recorded your decision making, recorded your deliberation, resolved at a committee meeting to make the decision whichever way you go, and you've publicized that in minutes of meeting, then a tenant complaining that they've lost some amenity because of that very reasonable decision is going to have a lot of trouble proving that claim, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think key to that as well is going to be communication, putting out communications. This is what happened. This is when the meeting was held. This is why the decision was made. And it's going to be hard for anyone to argue against reasonableness. That was, adhered to in terms of transparency.
Yep. Showing that you've put some thought into it, and not just having perhaps a building manager say, nope, it's all closed, there's a sign on the door. And understandably, residents are going to say, well, who are you to be making that decision?
That's not okay. And we've certainly seen stories of building managers whose intention were good. I'm not saying bad things about the building managers. They're trying to do the right thing, who have made decisions to just close down amenities. That's not okay. There's still a process that needs to be undertaken. There should be a committee meeting. There should be opportunity for people to submit their own views and for the committee to consider the circumstances. By all means, it is probably sensible for us to be shutting down pools and gyms and rooftops and things like that. But every unique situation needs to be considered, and it needs to be carried out in the right way.
Yep. For sure. I'm just seeing Gary say it's a good time to decide to refurbish the pool. Yes,
I agree.
That is a practical step if you've got the money to do it. And you've
I was going to say, you'll probably get a good deal right now, I'd say.
That is true, yes. On that note, we did talk yesterday about levies and finances and how we manage the future when it comes to predicting perhaps the people who perhaps can't pay their levies at all or in full because of having lost their job or lost their tenant, and planning for that. And I talked about committees who may decide, for taking into account, once again, unique circumstances, that they would not pursue, or they would delay pursuing arrears of levies on compassionate grounds. And we did get the question there, if there is a particular owner in a building and their levies have been overdue for years, can that person still be pursued?
Absolutely is the answer, definitely. Nobody is under any obligation to not pursue levies if that is the right thing to do. And again, it's going to come down to individual circumstance. And if there is a lot owner, I apologize, I can hear my bird in the background, which means you guys can. If there are circumstances where a lot owner just doesn't pay levies because they don't think they have to, there's no reason why you can't continue to pursue payment of those levies. And it may be necessary more than ever now for you to be doing that to keep cash flow going, depending on those circumstances. So don't think that this means it's a full stop if you decide to show some leniency to owners who've always paid on time and suddenly cannot. It doesn't have to be a blanket rule applied to everybody.
And again, that speaks to the importance of recording the reasons why you're making this decision, especially if you're going to make the decision for some and not others. And unfortunately, you might have to be quite upfront about that and say, well, look, Lot 34, they've been behind every quarter for the last 2 years. So we can't see that what is happening in the world right now, as far as we're aware, this person still has their job or still has their tenant, and they're asking for some leniency, some discount, some waiving of interest, some suspension of court proceedings. Well, look, as a committee, for these reasons, that's why we're not going to allow that or agree to that.
The only advice I'd give is be careful. I've seen some real estate agents who've been asking for things like, have you gone and tried to get your super under the new allowance that you can recall your super and things like that. And the response to that is you have no right as a property manager, as you would not have no right as a strata manager or a committee member to be giving financial advice. And by asking people, have they drawn down on their super, that's what you're doing. So it's really important that we don't overstep where our responsibilities are in terms of other people's financial circumstances as well.
Yeah, thank you. Really good reminder about that. Okay. Question here about contractors, a couple of questions. It is something that I'm seeing a bit more of, Natalie. I don't know about you at the moment. People are starting to think through, hang on a second. We've got owners who want to carry out work at their lots. They want to put their new bathroom in, their new kitchen. It's been approved at a general meeting, but now we're all really concerned about having more people coming through the front door, having contractors, having visitors, and we want to stop owners from doing that. And we want to say, and I've actually seen some buildings say this, we want to say no work is going on within lots or on the common property, full stop, end of story. Let me address that first. At the moment, there is no law at either a federal or a state level that says that contractors should stop work, construction sites are closed, or that there shouldn't be contractors coming on site to do work. So be very careful, committees, if you are saying to owners that they cannot proceed with work that's either started or has been approved, because I think you're going to get yourselves into trouble doing that. It is not to say that next week that law might not suddenly be passed, and we might be talking about that this time next week. At the moment, it is not the law, and the committee does not, in my view, have a reasonable basis upon which to stop contractors coming in and doing work. You can certainly have systems around those contractors coming in, and we did have a question that goes directly to that. Can an owners corporation request an owner to carry out a COVID clean prior to contractors coming in to carry out common property repairs and maintenance? I think that was, I'm not sure if I said owners corporation or owner, but can an owners corporation request an owner to carry out a COVID clean prior to contractors coming in to carry out repairs and maintenance? So I don't know whether that's about contractors coming in for owners or coming in for the owners corporation. I think you can have reasonable procedures around asking contractors to be mindful. What systems do they have in place? And I'm sure they want the work. They want to do the work. They want their contract kept. They want to get paid. They're going to be telling you, we are doing A, B, C, and D to protect your safety. So I think definitely asking them, what are you doing to make sure that the safety of our common property, the safety of our residents is secured? Okay, well, we use the fire stairs. We don't use the lifts. We have two different teams in different places. We're wearing this personal protective equipment, all of those things. If they can't answer those questions, well, it might be a different story, and you might have reasonable cause to be concerned. But I wouldn't be stopping them for sure from coming on site.
Yeah, I'd agree. And the word there is reasonable, and we have to continue to all be reasonable, even if our sense of what reasonable is somewhat different to what it was a few months ago. as long as as long as everyone's complying with social distancing, the apartment's large enough to have the number of people inside it that it needs to be, while we still have our 4 square meters and all those other rules. And remembering, even if it's not, it is not the owners corporation's position to be enforcing those laws in any case. There's no jurisdiction for the owners corporation to be doing that. And it's really important that we remember where, as an owners corporation, our responsibility to enforce bylaws are, and the Strata Schemes Management Act, versus, the states and the federal government's responsibility to be enforcing things like social distancing. And I get it. I get why you guys are calling your strata managers saying, I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, there's no magic wand we can wave. But if someone's halfway through a bathroom renovation, or they ripped their bathroom out prior to COVID-19 and now they don't have one, you'd be hard placed, I suspect, to prevent them from going through with that renovation, provided they're complying with all the requirements.
Yeah. I do want to say something about the social distancing and those rules, not to give anybody, let anybody off the hook in our strata buildings from being concerned about that. But as I've said before, I do feel that as a lawyer, as an officer of the court, I do have a role to play in making sure that you're all knowing what the law actually says and not making assumptions. When you read the public health order, the social distancing rule, which is now expressed as 4 square meters, does refer to public places. So it doesn't actually cover inside our homes. That makes sense. The government's not going to be able to regulate what you do inside your homes. But remember, our strata schemes are these bizarre situations from a property law aspect, that we have common spaces that are actually private. So common private spaces, not public, not covered by the public health order, not legally required under the public health order to practice social distancing in our common spaces. I do not say that for all of you to start going out and having parties on the roof terrace and hugging and cuddling up to your contractors, or letting them do that with each other. I say that because I don't think committees should be putting up notices citing the public health order as a reason to social distance. Say that it is a reasonable step. We want to prevent the spread. We want to protect our community. So please respect each other's space and practice social distancing when you're on the common property. Say it that way. Don't threaten. I have seen broadcast emails go out by communities this week that say the police will approach you if you are on the tennis court and you are using the recreational facility that has been closed and you are not practicing social distancing, and you will be fined. Let's not do that. Please don't do that. So be aware of what the laws actually say, what applies within your strata scheme, and always practice reasonable, effective decision making.
Yeah. And a good example of every day of that is the work health and safety legislation. We often hear people talk about it being applied to residential strata schemes. It's actually not applied to residential strata schemes, although there's some best practice guidelines that we could all be using there. So I think if you're looking for an everyday example that you can then apply to the here and now, that's probably one you can apply.
Carol is asking, is it okay to have your regular cleaners into your apartment? In my view, Carol, yes, because think about the public health orders this way. If you are staying at home, you don't have a reasonable excuse because you can work from home, you don't have caring responsibilities, you don't have school or teaching, you are complying because you're staying at home. If your cleaner is coming to you, they are working. They have the kind of job that requires them to leave their home. So the real question is is the cleaner in breach of the public health laws? You're not, because if assuming you're at home or you've got a reasonable excuse if you're not at home. Is the cleaner in breach? No, because the cleaner is doing their work and they cannot otherwise do their work than to leave their home and go to yours. So legal for your cleaner to come could well be a good idea if you're wanting to make sure that your home is kept nice and clean. I certainly do that. But don't go bailing up other residents because you're seeing their cleaners arrive and unpack everything. It is not, in my view, a breach of the law at the moment to have cleaners coming to personal residences.
Yeah, I'd agree. In fact, I need the cleaners now more than ever with everybody at home.
Yes, indeed. I'm feeling that too. Gary's saying, does that allow for differentiation between investors and owner residents?
I think that was the debt collection question.
About debt collection. Yeah. I mean, Gary, the message is that a committee should be considering this, each case, if you like, on its unique circumstances. So an investor who's lost their tenant may well be in a very different situation to an owner who is, as far as we're aware, still kicking along the same way. But then an owner may be a small business person who's experienced a significant decline in revenue, or they've lost their job. Then they're going to have their own reasons why they can't pay levies at this particular point in time. So it's a good point to remember what situation are they in. We need to look behind that. We need to ask some questions. And we need to make sure that we're making decisions that suit the circumstances.
Yeah. So the short answer, possibly yes. And in any circumstances there, absolutely. Especially now when we've got mortgage freezes, maybe for some people. I mean, there's so many factors right now for us to all think about.
Yeah. We did talk yesterday, or I did talk on the webinar yesterday about, I thought that there was probably no liability or no real risk of liability attaching to an owner's corporation if the owner's corporation allowed a contractor to attend and do work and a resident got sick. Contracted the virus and it was traced back to the contractor. I'm aware that there are some buildings that are saying that's the reason why we're stopping all work happening on the common property, because we're exposed. We may be negligent if somebody gets sick, and we'll be accused of negligence and we'll have legal proceedings on our hands. In my view, as long as the contractor, if the contractor is following all the systems, all the processes, doing all the things necessary to best protect them, themselves, their staff, the residents, I don't think we're going to be at risk of a negligence action on the part of a resident then suing the owner's corporation. Not to say it won't happen, but I think it would be a hard task. A follow-on question from that was, if a contractor gets sick from a resident, is there then exposure to the owner's corporation? My answer to that is quite similar. No, the contractor is obviously attending at their own risk. They're putting in place all their systems, their procedures to protect themselves. It may be a nice idea that if a resident is sick, that they would be saying, look, don't come in at the moment, don't come and do my smoke alarm check because I'm unwell. Don't know if I've got it or not, but I'm unwell, or I've been in contact with someone who is. But I don't suggest the owner's corporation gets involved in that kind of decision making.
Yeah, I'd agree, Amanda. In fact, it makes no sense to me that the owner's corporation could hold any liability for people getting sick in a pandemic situation. There's human responsibilities that we all have to each other to do the right thing, to not let people in your apartment if you're unwell and things like that. But I struggle to see where there would be a litigation case that turned out where an owner's corporation could possibly be held responsible for either another person getting unwell in the building or a contractor. I think even finding the tracing would be near on impossible in terms of where did you get this disease from. It's certainly not a risk I think an owner's corporation needs to be concerned with right now.
Yep, I agree. All right, we have one more question here. Well, we have a number of questions, but I think we have time for one more that I do want to get to. I mentioned on the webinar yesterday that there is a process that I laid out in the webinar for a way that one person can attend a meeting, and the meeting can proceed with just that one person present for the purpose of resolving to conduct future meetings electronically or by any other means. And I had said that the person who is attending that meeting should be the strata manager with delegated authority to act as chair, or the chairperson, because they are the person who will need to, in the absence of anybody else, chair the meeting. And the question that I got was, does that person really have to be the elected chairperson, or can it be somebody else who then just takes on the role of the chairperson for the meeting? And I thought that was such a good question, and it caused me to go back and have a look at Schedule 1 in our New South Wales legislation. Clause 12 in Schedule 1 talks about the chairing of meetings, and it says that if the chairperson is present at a meeting, then the chairperson is the one to preside. If the chairperson is absent, then the people who are present at the meeting can elect one of their number to preside at that meeting. And the person who's elected is then taken to be the chairperson of the owners corporation. And that clause also makes clear that the chairperson may be the only person present at the meeting. So the way I read that is, if whoever is the only person present, as long as they're eligible to vote, and if they're not an owner or they're not financial, then if they're holding a proxy, which enables them to vote, makes them eligible, then they can self-elect, if you like, because they're the only ones there, to nominate themselves as the chairperson for the purpose of conducting that meeting. So to answer that question, I think it might have been a question from Bruce, who I'm not sure is still here. Yes, you can have your secretary or somebody else attend, Bruce, if your chairperson is not willing, able, or competent to attend, and just make sure that they do make a note in the minutes that they elected themselves the chairperson for the purpose of conducting that meeting.
That chairperson question is always a tricky one, both in relation to proxies and who should be chairing meetings. But yeah, I'd completely agree with Amanda's interpretation there. The Act's really clear that the chairperson may be the only person at the meeting. It's obviously considered, probably not COVID-19, but it's considered a circumstance where that may be the case.
Yeah, and if you are just coming in, because I've seen a few more people turn up just towards the end here, and you've heard me talk about that process of convening a meeting where you only have one person present in New South Wales, perfectly legal and able to be done, just go and have a look at my video where I explain. It's a short video, and I just take you through some points as to what you need to be thinking about and doing if you're going to take on that process. And that video is over on the covidandapartments.info page that I mentioned up the top of this video.
It's a great tip. It's one I wouldn't have thought out. Shout out to Tim Sarah on my part.
Yes.
He's the one that brought it to my attention. I would not have gone there in lateral thinking. It's a great solution.
Yeah, thank you. Tim was here earlier. I'm not sure if he still is, but Tim Sarah, Sydney Strata Manager at Strata Choice. Also been a podcast guest and also helps our members out in the forum. He was the one who brought it to my attention. Yeah. And look, I've been putting it out there. I am always one to these creative ideas, out of the box thinking, put them out there, publicize it as an idea. I have yet to hear from anyone who tells me that there's a problem with it or it can't be done. Willing and open to be hearing that. I want to make sure that everybody is armed with the right tools to be making legal decisions at this time. But yeah, so far, I think people are applying that process. I know Tim's been using it with his buildings, and you'll probably do that too, Natalie.
Absolutely.
Just to get over this hurdle. So look, gosh, these hours go by so fast. I never do get a chance to drink very much wine. I don't know how much you got through.
Still.
But it has been a very happy hour as we move into our long weekend, and it's been lovely to spend it with all of you. Once again, if you have enjoyed this, give us a thumbs up, give us a love heart. It helps to let others know. The more support that we get here, the more that the Facebook wheels go in motion, and the more people that we can reach. So please do keep joining us. I intend to keep doing this for as long as the questions keep coming in and we keep having to face these difficult circumstances. I want to be here for you. So I plan to be back here 4 o'clock next Friday, and whatever may come in between now and then, who knows? The links that I've talked about today are all here in the chat, so go back and check those out. I do recommend the webinar. As I said, you have really in that webinar that one place where at least up to yesterday, being Thursday the 9th of April, we have up-to-date information and resources in that one place for you.
I second the webinar. It's Amanda's did an amazing job. I was blown away by how helpful it was. So definitely, even if you think you've heard it all, you haven't. Go and check out the webinar.
Excellent. And thank you, Savia. Thank you, Pauline. Thank you, Carol. Everybody who's saying thank you there for being here. Go and enjoy your weekend. Spend some time with your loved ones. Be safe, relax, do something nice, drink wine, read books, watch movies. Enjoy.
Thanks, guys. Bye.